building those bonds and it's nurturing those perceptions and that connection with those similar groups. However, there are also opportunities where social media allows you to bridge across differences as well. And so we saw some of that, and I'll talk more about that with Club Quarantine. But social media also offers a safe space from a spiritual connection perspective as well. So just a little, I'll give you an idea, just a little graphic of what the difference is between active and passive social media use. So active being chatting, sending content messages, editing profiles. You know, we look at this from the public and private context. And passive, of course, is liking and commenting. So my research is a little bit outside of this diagram in the sense that the previous research doesn't talk about what Instagram or live engagement does and can mean for well-being and can mean for, you know, in relation to active and passive use. So this is where that research kind of addresses that gap. From a coping perspective, when we talk about COVID-19 and the fact that COVID and dealing with the pandemic, we know that loneliness increased, mental well-being decreased, and we saw a lot of people kind of going to social media to cope with their circumstances. And so during the pandemic, we saw people building networks on social media, as well as accessing more information. So on a positive perspective, social media allows you to kind of get more information that maybe wasn't available to you kind of in your local geographic space or in your local community. And so it allows you to kind of go outward. However, also during the pandemic, there was this surge of misinformation about COVID-19, the pandemic, how to navigate it from a health perspective, et cetera. We saw people talking about, you know, hey, you can cure COVID by drinking bleach, for example, right? I don't know if anybody remembers that. That's obviously misinformation. And so there was quite a bit of that happening on social media. Active use of social media can also contribute to just missing more, but yet validating the feelings of the pandemic. So that those who were going through COVID look to social media to just validate, hey, I'm feeling a little lonely, or, you know, just feeling a little challenged right now, and there are other people feeling this too. So if you're in the house in quarantine by yourself, you're able to go to social media and share your feelings with others. So that does help with their well-being, and that's how people were using it during COVID. So also during COVID, we saw this surge of virtual dance parties. So people domestically here in the United States, and we saw quite a few popping up in London, Italy, et cetera. And there's some research covering those dance parties as well. But it allowed people to kind of connect collectively, but also it leveraged the power of music and dance to release and to cope, which also built your kind of mental strength and fortitude during this very difficult and challenging time. It builds on the research around art and music as essential parts of enabling healing and coping. And in addition to that, there's a lot of research, well, there's some research on hip-hop music and healing as well. And the power of just kind of through the music and the storytelling that happens, it allows you to triumph or strengthen your ability to make it through whatever challenges you might be enduring at the time. So this particular research continues to kind of build on this space that music and movement creates for communities, and this ability to heal and cope through circumstances through that. So I use the uses and gratification theory as a way to kind of frame the research. And so what this says is that audiences engage with social media in order to satisfy a particular need. And some of those needs can look like entertainment, escapism, education, etc. And so I ended up looking at the comments related to Club Quarantine. So those who attended virtually, what were they thinking as a result of their attendance? How did they feel? What did it do for them? Because we can say kind of preliminarily, hey, I attended, I felt great attending. But what did others say kind of from a collective perspective? And so I found several things in the comments, just analyzing several comments. The incorporation of humor, for example, we saw comedians attend and kind of go on live with D Nice, as well as Spice Adams, Tiffany Haddish, etc. So humor tended to elevate this experience of that the music and the movement also allowed. So this uplifting of the spirit. We saw moods uplifted and people talk about, hey, I needed this, and gratitude expressed to be nice. There was also nostalgia. So some of the music encouraged people to kind of move back and think about, okay, where was I when I heard this song? A happier time, which also uplifted spirits. People talked about dancing with their families, their children, their grandchildren. So it was building across generations. And then there were also shout outs. You know, we always do shout outs to where we're from. And so people were shouting out from different countries. So it was building this community and this common experience that we were already experiencing quarantine and COVID together, the pandemic, but this also, this space of quarantine allowed us to reach in a positive space and kind of collectively cope and uplift ourselves and our spirits through the engagement with the music and dancing. And so I did want to share this quote from D-Nice. He said, we're in lockdown and we're all in this virtual platform. My IG live and I was playing music and it felt like old times when I first started. I just wanted to play more music. I saw what was happening. I was reading the comments and I knew what I was doing mattered to people. It was about me providing a space for people to hang out and listen to music with their families. It was all based on love and people wanting to feel connected to each other. I was home. I love music. I love community. It was just fun. And so I think D-Nice understood the power that he held as a DJ and was able to leverage that power and that talent and share it with other people in this kind of social virtual space to help others kind of escape what was going on around them and uplift spirits during a very anxious time, allowing us to kind of further understand and see the power of hip hop in bridging across classes, geographies, generations, and also motivate and encourage healing. So with that, thank you.
Yeah, greetings everybody. Yeah, my name is Asare. I'm coming to you from Ghana. I'm a PhD student at African Studies. I'll be presenting on hip-hop as a vessel for Black consciousness by looking at like two rappers. We have one coming out of Lome, Togo, and the other from Ghana. These are not just rappers, these are like brothers. And the work they do is just really amazing. Like they speak to Black people. And I wanted to highlight that by using the framework of Black consciousness as propounded by Nana people from Southern Africa. So when in the 60s, Nana people was speaking of Black consciousness, here in the US, we're speaking of Black power. In West Africa, we're talking of, Nana was talking of the African personality. So in doing this, I'm also trying to merge, all of these movements going on. But to get into the video quickly, I just want to read a quote from Nana people from on Black consciousness, which he says, it is a manifestation of a new realization that by seeking to run away from themselves and to emulate a white man, Blacks are insulting the intelligence of whoever created them. Black consciousness, therefore, takes cognizance of the deliberateness of God's plan in creating Black people Black. It seeks to infuse the Black community with a newfound pride in themselves, their efforts, their value systems, their culture, their religion, and their outlook to life. The first step, therefore, is to make the Black man come to himself, to pump back life into his empty shell, to infuse him with pride and dignity, to remind him of his complicity in the crime of allowing himself to be misused and therefore letting evil reign supreme in the country of his birth. So with that being said, this is a film I made of the two rappers.
L'arrangement des chapitres est variable, mais progressivement, un ordre s'impose.
Feu dans les cœurs aveuglés, la révolte dans les têtes cassinées, une balle rap pour les stagner, au lance gorgé, qui cesse des chars, au bras, au flanc, qui pèse des falaises, je fais manger les cendres, des dos séchés comme brasier, pour aviver la mémoire de nos soldats massacrés, et pour le métier la compagnie,
so Amewuga is an Ewe word that means human beings have more value than material things. Ame means human being. Wu means over, more. Ka means money, material things. So yeah, the idea behind that title is just to remind us that human beings are not just blood and flesh. We are something spiritual too. And I think the problems we are having in Africa today, these problems are not just linked to political mismanagement, etc. I think it's also related to our roots that we have lost. And what are states God's children? As a children of God, they need so I think we start from having a sense of belonging, knowing where you're from, where you're born. It's really about identity with regards to black people. So it's my extremely dedicated to crime. One of the revelations that came to me that it is because of the black people knew and understand who they are and where they come from. And so November is a solid reminder who to say black people are really very special people in the world. Despite the fact that wherever you go in the world, black people are almost looked out. So the Nyame was truly a reminder for black people to know who they are, where they are from, and where they go. And it sort of brought power and strength to First of all, I'm speaking to my people, and my people are those who are not just necessarily living in Africa, but those who Africa live in there. those who have Africa in their heart. These are people I'm talking to. You know, there's many organizations talking about Africa. There's many people like Africa already. I think what Africa needs today is people that love him or her truth. So yeah, my audience is people who think that we can do something for Africa. We can do something so that Africans can get back the dignity. These are the people I'm talking to. It started from the cover of the album. Why those came this? Why those artifacts? Why this king? What that kingdom? You know that thing that the cover of the album already is just a call like see who we are. You know, starting from the cover of the album. Now we go to the lyrics, we go to the music, we go to the beats, we go to the rhythms, you know, we go to now the visual, all the movies, all the documentaries, all the experimental films that we are creating. For me, all this together is to talk to us like see all the good things that we have in this continent, but also see all the bad things also that we have in the continent. So Amewuga is not just to talk about saying we can do, we can do, we can do. It's also to show like a kind of mirror that can see the bad aspect of what's going on there. Identity, the use of sound and traditional elements in the music is to underline and let people know what identity truly means. You know, for instance, my name Akan or PureAkan. Wherever I just want to say my name is Akan. Easy. Somebody knows where I'm from. You know, so identity to let people know that okay, I can identify with this and I can relate to this. You know, but I can't be say obi find in something just few others. So what you can relate to is it becomes easier to connect to and easier to consume, you know, say. So using traditional elements is to bring sort of connection for my music to black people all over around the world. Those who live in Africa and those who live outside Africa. For them to identify that this is something that we love to do, it's something that we need to listen to. And so far, it's magical. But I think that today, if I go on stage, I consider myself like the spirit on stage to talk to people. So the first thing I always like kind of Igbo style. And the Igbo, let's say to make it simple, in the Yoruba tradition, there are those who are the link between, let's say, the ancestors and those and the living ones. And that's for me also the role of an artist. An artist can connect visible and invisible. So that's the way I appropriate that tradition. Children signifies the future. Diving into the album, I realized the need to tap into the future because the past is, despite very important, gone. You know, but the future is what we can work towards. And so, getting into the album, I realized the need to have an interaction with the future.
and the future is the kids. So we said, okay, let's talk to some kids. Yeah, it's really an initiative to engage with the future now, even before we get there.
So this is on HipHop Africa. So if you have to go to hiphopafrica.com, you find the video there. Then currently that's the only places available at. Thank you.
Morning, everybody. Morning. How y'all doing today? All right. Nope, that's not that one. Okay. I think it's, all right, great. Hi, everyone. My name is Alessandra Daniels. I am a second-year PhD student in the German Studies program, which is a joint program between the University of Chapel Hill, North Carolina Chapel Hill, and Duke University. I'm a native Washingtonian, so this means a lot to me to be presenting here in Howard today. I also have my family in the audience, and this is the first time that they see me present, so I feel very, very honored that they're here today. So my research stems in the area of Black German studies, which is a very, very small area of research. Specifically, I look at Afro-German hip-hop, Afro-German youth culture, and the intersection between the African-American and Afro-German diaspora. So my master's thesis was entitled Black is the New Black, Defining Afro-German Blackness Through the Influence of American Media. And I will be presenting a segment of it today, which I entitled For the Global Culture, Bridging the Gap Through Hip Hop. So in my entire master's thesis, I looked at how Afro-Germans express their Blackness through three forms of media, radio, podcast, and hip hop. And so today I'm presenting the hip hop section to you all. Okay. For the younger people, if I say I'm German, it's not enough. Older people, they ask, where do you come from? I say, Cologne. They say, no, no. This gives you the feeling that they're saying, you're not from us. Black identity is versatile and comprehensive. The experiences and the backgrounds that make up Black identity are innumerable. And while societies have deemed through various stereotypes that certain facets of appearance or language define one's race or ethnicity, each Black experience is valid and worthy of expression and exploration. Because of the prominent Black population in the United States, Afro-Germans have largely drawn connections to African-American culture and media to relate to other Black bodies who have similar experiences of living in a white majority nation. For Afro-Germans, expressing their identity through media takes many forms and serves as a catharsis for a community that lacks adequate representation in our home country. Black art and media, such as hip-hop and rap music, form a transnational language and have the ability to be understood no matter where one comes from. As two of the most popular genres in the world, hip-hop and rap carry central messages created by the Black community, such as Black pride, Afrocentrism, and a passion for the area that one is from, and are now being enjoyed on a global scale, often being adapted to fit distinctive cultures. Hip-hop and rap music produced in Germany frequently reiterate these themes and often adjust to reflect those with immigrant backgrounds, even as the complexity of the German identity not only tackles race, but also nationality. In this paper, I argue that Afro-Germans navigate and construct their blackness, their black identities, on both sides of the hyphen, as Africans and as Germans, via the use of media such as hip-hop, which was first popularized in a Black American context. Germany's scarcity of Black representation led Afro-Germans to seek it elsewhere. Therefore, they became aware of an African-American plight for recognition and equality that so closely mirrored their own. I also contend that Afrocentrism, in particular, connects both African-American and Afro-German diasporas to one another, as well as their own unique Black experiences. This paper investigates a period of 3 decades during which issues of social justice remain a constant in both the United States and in Germany, to highlight the changes in attitudes brought on by the aforementioned media practices that shape Afro-German self-identification in reference to race and nationality. As a form of expression and a vital element of an internationally thriving subculture, rap and hip-hop culture have permeated environments far beyond their birthplace in New York City. Their influence is central in both the United States and Germany, and the genres have evolved distinctively to serve the functions needed by populations and societies of each country. Rap music arrived in Germany in the 1970s when the Sugar Hill Gang's Rappers Alike became the first commercially successful rap song in both the US and German-speaking countries. Following that early success, American rap music became popular in Germany throughout the 1980s and 1980s, and inspired Germans of all backgrounds to create their own similar music. Musician Falco was the first to use German lyrics in a rap song with his successful early tracks in the 1980s, Der Kommissar and Amadeus. In the latter half of the 1980s, German musicians continued to create rap music more frequently. However, it would not see any commercial success until the early 1990s, when, as Kai-Uwe Verbeck argues, quote, the allegedly apolitical and predominantly white German middle class, Neue Schule, or New School, took over a changing of the guard, according to hip-hop lore. In the context of American hip-hop, Trisha Rose states that rap music's appeal was not solely based on and in African-American communities. It, quote, also gained phenomenal popularity among young people of all cultural backgrounds, including middle-class white teenagers, who seem to be an increasingly significant audience of rap music. The inventors of rap in the United States were predominantly African-American Caribbean youth from lower socioeconomic classes, and the culture that they formed out of their own experiences in America resonated greatly with German youth living similar lives across the Atlantic. In addition to white teenagers in both countries, Germans with migration backgrounds from various parts of Europe, Africa, and Asia saw a connection between how they navigated German society and also themes of racism, poverty, and oppressive police relations in rap music. David Tuke states in Rap Attack, there's a certain attitude that comes with the kind of daily stress experienced by Black and Hispanic youth, which is based on the conditions in which they live. This particular attitude is developed out of the oppressed and exploited history of Black and Hispanic peoples. As long as the same conditions exist, so will the attitude. Hip-hop brings with it a taste of this attitude despite white cultural domination and commercialization. This perspective arose from the lived experiences of Black and Hispanic youth directly influenced the beginnings of hip-hop and rap, but nevertheless is the genre's original African identity evident through practices that have been preserved in its creation. Aspects of West African culture, such as storytelling by way of traditional raconteurs known as griots, have taken a new form through rap and have created a kind of expression that connects the descendants of a captured generation to a homeland and a new. Griots serve as oral historians in the same way that rappers may be considered traditional storytellers, in the sense that they are both creators of rhetoric as well as critics of rhetoric. Despite the sufferings from Africa that African Americans are made to endure via the transatlantic slave trade, the similarities that rap and hip hop hold to oral traditions of Africa allow many African Americans to claim not only a new identity that was formed in the New World, but also to reclaim an identity that was taken away from them. As Michael Eric Dyson argues in Performance, Protest, and Prophecy in the Culture of Hip Hop, rap and hip hop expresses, quote, the desire of young Black people to reclaim their history, reactivate forms of Black radicalism, and contest the powers of despair, hopelessness, and genocide that presently besiege the Black community, unquote. Such a reclamation of African history brings with it a sense of pride in one's identity and one's own narrative that African Americans had no say in losing. While the initial beginnings of hip hop started through block parties in the late 1970s during the old school era of the genre, the Afrocentric outlook developed in the later half of the 1980s and led to the creation of legendary music groups, songs and styles that were unapologetic in their identities and did not fear the opinions of the white majority culture. Dyson claims that rap music has undergone 3 stages since inception. The first stage was categorized as light-hearted banter, boastful self-assertion. The second introduced social critique. The last stage brought more experimentation by combining the first 2 stages along with musical elements of other genres as well. With Afrocentrism on the rise amongst African Americans in the United States, songs from artists such as Queen Latifah and Kool Moe Dee has showed the evident pride that they felt in their heritage fall into the second stage of social critique. Though this emergence was new in hip hop at the time, this particular social critique stemmed from the Black Power movements in the 1960s and 70s. As predecessors to rap and hip hop, R&B, jazz, soul, and funk all reflected early Afrocentrism. Songs such as Nina Simone's Mississippi Goddamn and James Brown's Say It Loud, I'm Black and Not Proud were only 2 in the plethora of dynamic anthems that defined Black culture during the Civil Rights movement. It is more difficult to analyze the stages of rap evolution in Germany because, as Kai Uwe Berbeck states, in contrast to original inception in the South Bronx, then hip-hop in West Germany did not originate as a localized subculture with a relatively well-documented beginning. Instead, it is a product of widely dispersed and at times refracted transatlantic, but also inter-European flows. While German hip-hop certainly evolved via subculture process until it reappeared in the mainstream again around 1992, it is crucial to understand as a product. It is crucial to understand it as a product of multiple and often contradictory impulses that not only positioned it somewhat awkwardly vis-a-vis what hip-hop originally meant as an African American culture, but also resulted in numerous disconnected local permutations. The formation of the German hip-hop mainstream outline came nearly a decade after that of the United States. Due to the difficulty of obtaining American records, German rappers attempted to emulate American styles in their own music to the best of their abilities. This included rapping about the same subject matters as their counterparts overseas to similarly create identity-affirming music. At the same time, however, German artists did not necessarily aim to articulate the pride in their ethnic background until decades after American artists did. During the 1990s, Germans with migration backgrounds made it a point to assert their national identities over their ethnic identities, to stress that they indeed belong in their country of birth and should be treated accordingly. German hip-hop group Fresh Family, which included members of Turkish, Moroccan, Macedonian, Spanish, and German descent, were one of the first groups to mimic the American style of hip-hop and rap music to talk about the common themes of drugs, violence, and immigration in their home neighborhood of Bautzen-Metz, an area of the federal state of North Rhine-Westphalia in northwestern Germany, known for its unemployment rate and street violence. Fresh Family's music reflected the fact that the majority of their members were Germans with migration backgrounds and touched upon the realities of being seen as a foreigner in their own country. Songs such as Amewuga, released in 1991, and Heimat, or Homeland, released in 1992, were innovated in German hip-hop for the way that they tackled the subject matter of pluralized identities and embraced being both from Germany and from one ancestral homeland. Jesus Nuden explores the lyrical content of Fresh Family's music and states that it points to their actual experiences of social, political, and medial discrimination as a reason for their rebellion. For instance, in the opening lines of Amewuga, Fresh Family's frontman, Tahir Chebik, begins the song by rapping in a heavily accented and broken German, saying, "Mein Name ist Amewuga, lass mich doch erzählen. Du musst es schon gut zuhören, ich kann nicht sehr viel Deutsch. Ich komme von der Türkei 2 Jahre her, und ich bin gefreut, doch Leben hier schwer." Since Chebik was of Turkish descent, he is easily able to portray what first and second generation immigrants to Germany go through when they must experience a new language and begin to integrate into German society. This is a reality that an entire generation of Gastarbeiter, guest workers, underwent after many foreign workers moved to Germany between 1955 and 1973 for better lives and opportunities. Many of the guest workers started families in Germany, which constituted the country's first large post-war migration boom. Also in 1993, Heidelberg-based group Advanced Chemistry released their song "From Land," or "Foreign in Your Own Nation," which is often hailed as one of the most influential rap songs in the German music scene. This song highlighted the struggles of the youth with non-German backgrounds, including themes of marginalization that the group members themselves had gone through as Germans of Italian, Ghanaian, and Haitian descent. For example, in the opening scene to the music video "From Land," The group members brandish their green German passports to emphasize that they are in their country of birth and therefore rightly are where they belong. The discourse that is created for listeners of Seventh Eigen Land directly address Germans who dare ask the loaded question of woher kommst du, where are you from, or wo kommst du wirklich, where are you really from, to which many Germans with migration backgrounds are often subject. With a rap style inspired by American groups such as Public Enemy, Advanced Chemistry's confrontational attitude comes across unapologetic and on the offense. By showing their passports, this display of tangible citizenship is a gesture that counters narratives of non-belonging and brings an accusatory observers that denies notions of discrimination face to face with the group's reality. Advanced Chemistry felt it necessary to justify where they come from as well as their actions when in public, as mentioned in the lyrics, to demonstrate that they are upstanding German citizens who must not always have blonde hair and blue eyes. With its release in the early 1990s, Seventh Eigen Land followed in the footsteps of Fresh Family and commercially paved the way for German rap to tackle social issues of race and identity in a public forum by addressing forms of bias varying from racial profiling to microaggressions based on one's homeland. In affirming that they should not be seen as alien, foreign, or strange, all connotated in the German word Fremd, Advanced Chemistry presents the idea that regardless of where one's roots may lie or how someone appears due to their ethnic background, they are still Germans both legally and culturally. Racial identity in German rap has developed roughly each decade with a push to be seen as an equal citizen as at the first stage, a trans and multinational exchange of identity between the US and Germany at the second stage, and a pride in one's heritage over their nationality at the third, comparable to the Afrocentric movement in American rap. While in the early 1990s, both Fresh Family and Advanced Chemistry demanded that they be seen just as any other German in their home country, by the mid to late 1990s, German rap progressed to the next stage in the genre's development, where a new stage of music began. More racial minorities emerged in German rap culture, both in front of the scenes and behind the scenes. Afro-German producers such as Moses Pelham diversified German hip-hop by signing female artists and more artists of color to his rap label 3P, just as other rap artists began to embrace the gangster rap wave that came from the US. Instead of promoting socially conscious narratives about identity, rap labels like Apple Berlin, founded in 2001, saw the potential in signing artists who made successful yet controversial names for themselves. Anis Mohammed Youssef Kachichi, famously known by his rap moniker Bushido, used shock value tactics such as violence and misogyny to increase album sales and to also emphasize his race to convey his gangster rap image. Since the days of Apple Berlin, many rappers with a migration background in Germany have moved past the perfunctory representations of their race to keep street cred or claim keeping it real to more authentically represent themselves and other ethnic minorities. The group SAM, made up of brothers Cello and Samson Wieland, who are Zambian and German descent, and rappers like Amewuga, a queer female artist of Eritrean and Saudi Arabian descent, display a more accurate depiction of today's ethnic German youth in hip-hop since the Afro-Berlin scene. According to African Studies professor Molefi Kente Asante, Afrocentricity implies that most complete philosophical totalizations of the African being at the center of their existence, and this totality comes to light in German rap and songs such as Da Wo Du Herkommst by Sam. Sam wrote the song Da Wo Du Herkommst, There Where You're Really From, utilizing the same invasive question that Advanced Chemistry first introduced in 1992, as it is often asked in Germans with migration background to inquire about their appearance, usually in reference to their skin tone or hair texture. Though Da Wo Du Herkommst does not center Afrocentrism in the way that it claims the rapper's pride in their heritage, the song mainly focuses on the unfortunate prejudices that come with the Black experience in Germany. This discrimination is experienced by the artist makes them question German society rather than question who they are as Afro-Germans. In the original version of the song, leader Samson raps about the complaints that arise when he's interested in dating a white German person. Yet the remix version of the song, that came out in 2020, the added verses reflect the conditional acceptance of Black people in Germany, specifically in the areas of sports, dating, music, and fashion, and show how this is contradicted by the irrational fear and overcriminalization of Black people, especially Black men. Hip-hop created by African Americans in the United States greatly shaped the identity and the language of German rappers, especially those of African descent. And this is clear in the opening lyrics of the remix songs, where rapper Blue states, "Da wo ich herkomme, wollen wir am Block. Da wo du herkommst, siehst du mich nicht. Da wo ich hingucke, sehe ich viele von euch. Die sagen, übertreib nicht mit diesem Judge-Leut." The intersection of racial communities is emphasized here by Booth's uses of diverse language, as well as differing stages on the loaded topics of his George Floyd's murder, sets the background for the almost 7-minute song. The song released in the summer of 2020 was a direct response to the multiple racially charged events coming out of the United States that caused a transnational ripple effect, spread primarily via social media. Compounded by the unjust murder of Breonna Taylor by police forces in Louisville, Kentucky, the video footage of 46-year-old George Floyd's murder by Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin sparked a rightful uproar within communities of color and amongst allies as well. This clamor led to a series of worldwide movements and protests condemning police brutality in addition to systemic racism on all fronts. Protests in Germany were second only to the United States, and significant portions of the Afro-German community stressed that these degrading occurrences happen not only in the US, but also in the Federal Republic, and should not only be seen as an American issue. Since Da wo du herkommst is presented by a group of Afro-Germans and represents the perspectives based upon their experiences, it's not difficult to distinguish who was intended in the terms ich und wir, or I and we, versus du und euch, you and y'all, and Blue's verse. The racial background and differences are not only physical for Blue's here, but they also manifest in the demeanor of the white people in his neighborhood. He continues to rap that he would love to continue living the rest of his life in Germany, but the racial pigeonholing of Afro-Germans makes his life difficult to handle. By choosing to confront these frustrations publicly through rap music, Blue shares Judy McDonald's perspective that rap music is a symbol of hope, increased pride, and self-esteem at a time when any other evidence of free has been eroded by prevailing social conditions. Rap serves as an outlet for Blues from an otherwise uncomfortable and discriminatory community. Later in the song, Nyame follows Blues in the third verse, rhyming, "Die Nachbarn gaffen, mein Gesicht in deine Gegend nicht bekannt, und entscheidend mache ich ihnen Angst. Dein Daten was nur von deiner Zukunft und möchte ich nicht, ich sage so nicht. Deine Morgen liegt es, dass ich diese Zukunft suche, doch für ein Leben der Wert ist es zu gut." Ada addresses the stereotypes of African immigrants in Germany, but also the concept of cultural appreciation without acceptance. The German mother figure in Ada's line appreciates the food and fashion of West Africa while neglecting those who created the items that she enjoys. It is implied that while she will gladly consume this culture, she would likely be distressed if her child made a life with a Black person, as this would be seen as a downgrade and unacceptable in her eyes. Her husband and the father figure in the verse warns against discrimination and tells the child that they should think of their future as dating a Black person would be seen as an unforgivable deed. And this sentiment is compounded by later verses in the song by Asare, presented from the perspective of the father. While the way the parents are represented in the song can be understood as a critique of Germans who see themselves as progressive, but still carry on their own prejudices. The German partner in Da wo du herkommst is told to consider their future, likely due to the father's fear of a relationship contamination with his child, a fear which has been a part of Afro-German history and Afro-German experiences going back to World War II, when mixed-race children were considered to be a racial peculiarity. The intervention that Da wo du herkommst makes in Afro-German history is a tie to these previous Afro-German experiences into the present, and thus shows that this history is very much alive in Germany today. At the same time, however, hip-hop, and especially its Afrocentric iteration, have become a way for younger generations of Afro-Germans to take control of their history. I'm getting that the time is up sign, so I will back this up really quickly. Okay. Although there was an experience that is shared regardless of where one is from in the diaspora, Black people are not a monolith. It is not necessary to have been born in Africa or gone to Africa to have an African experience. And this origin is what connects diasporans over time and space. Hip hop and rap, with their origins in the oral traditions of Africa, serve as not only an art form that join the Black community, but also give a sense of identity to oppressed peoples worldwide regardless of their origin. Rap music is a common denominator used to bring attention to the struggles of marginalized people, and it has been immensely beneficial for such marginalized groups to assert frustrations in society at large. For Black youth, discovering and even at times rediscovering their identity in the face of Eurocentrism has always been a challenge. And it's the unity of the Black community that partially alleviates this burden. The reach of hip hop and other media forms have figuratively shrunk the African diaspora and made the exchange of ideas and experiences more feasible amongst the global Black community. For Afro-Germans who did not receive this representation in their own country, the validation gained from American forms of media, as well as the creation of their own content, allows them to control the narrative of their identities and dictate how they are seen. Whether they wish to be seen as Germans, Afro-Germans, or simply perceived and accepted for their Blackness, their identities are in their hands and also subsequently in their control.
We understand the role of Shakur influence in hip hop culture.
Good afternoon, everyone. I know I'm in between you all and lunch, so I'll try to be, quick.
Is that the one?
Oh, okay. But it's good to be home at HU. I graduated with my PhD here in 2019. Now I'm a professor of history and African studies at Trinity, Washington University. So just right 8 minutes down the street. So, okay, so I'll be presenting on Assata Shakur's influence on hip hop and culture. This is a current book project that I have with Princeton Press. My book project is titled The Black Underground, Assata Shakur and Global Freedom Struggles. And so looking at her through the lens of the Black freedom struggle, I'm doing oral interviews with people who have met her and known her through the struggle, who met her in Cuba when she was above ground. And so thinking about underground, right, through this lens of political organizers being very much a part of these struggles, but also the way that hip hop is also a part of this, underground experience, especially for a lot of rappers who we may consider conscious, et cetera. So I'll be talking a little bit about them. But first, I do want to open up by kind of giving reference to what this month is. In addition to it being, 50 years of hip hop, it's also a Black August. We celebrate and commemorate Black August as a way to think of political prisoners, those who have gone, like Dr. Shakur, who I'll talk about a little, but also people like Nyame, Jamal, Assata Shakur, who's a former political prisoner, and so many others, but especially George Jackson, who was a political prisoner in California, who was murdered in his cell, and so many others. I mean, the list goes on, and so there are still political prisoners who are incarcerated today. And so during this month, we commemorate those who are still within that struggle, because until they are free, we are all still a part of the club. So it's not just a month to celebrate Black stuff, it's intentional about political prisoners. And sorry, my eyes watering, I'm not crying. So some key texts that I use specifically in this research, and how I approach this work, being an undergrad, I went to Grambling State University for undergrad, is where I first learned about Assata Shakur, this brother from California. I was all cloaked out in my African garb, thinking I was, I don't know, Angela Davis or something. And he was like, oh, maybe you read Assata Shakur. And I was like, no. And I had just finished reading Malcolm X's autobiography. It's like this path to consciousness, especially in HBCUs that we take. And he put me on Assata, and it completely transformed my trajectory and my research in terms of what I wanted to do. And so I use that book consistently. Of course, in this research, you have to. And so the other book, Inadmissible Evidence, is the book that her aunt, who was also her lawyer, wrote. And so she talks about Assata, but also being a lawyer for the Black Liberation Army, still Black, still strong, Jerusalem, Wahab, and Assata, all are published in there. And then all of my work is foundational to the Black radical tradition. And so I draw from Cedric Robinson and other scholars who, use that work. And then just recently, this book, An American Family, that focuses on the Shakur family, just dropped. And so I'm reading that now. And so when we think about Shakur, of course, we immediately think about Tupac, and even his mother, Greene. I'll talk a little bit about Dear Mama. And so this book shows that genealogy of that family. Not all of them were related, like by blood, but they are part of a tradition of people who are continuing the struggle, also calling themselves New Africans. And so the framework that I draw from is from the Black Studies, Africana Studies framework. Many of you go to Howard, who's taken Dr. Carr or Dr. Myers, they have seen this before. And so today, while hip hop focuses and is throughout all of these frameworks, I'll just be looking at the social structure, the governance structure in particular, and that's who are we to ourselves? Because oftentimes we allow others from the outside to look at us and to describe our struggles. And even through the lens of hip hop, this is a way, it's like for us by us, right? This is a way for us to fully express who we are. And so hip hop does that. And then also that final framing question, which I love, which comes from Sister Sonia Sanchez, right? How do we free us? And so I don't do any work that does not include some aspect of freedom and liberation, even in my own life. I'm an organizer in Pan-African Community Action, which is a grassroots organization here in DC, and we're organizing around community control over police. And so I think it's important for us all, especially as academics, practitioners of this work, to always be thinking about how our work liberates and transforms this world. So who is Assata, formerly known as Joanne Chesimard, which, my title, Break Free Like Chesimard, which I talk about. Born in Queens, New York, however, she did get a full upbringing in Wilmington, North Carolina with her grandparents. And so she does have that, Southern experience of dealing with racism and learning about what that means. And shout out to what happened just recently in Alabama, right? We know that the South not only got something to say, but the South will shoot back and does pull up when needed. And so I think about Assata. Actually, my first chapter is on Assata in the South as a form of radicalization for a lot of our leaders, Huey P. Newton, Geronimo Pratt. I mean, Assata, of course, is so many, the Deacons of Defense, so many organizers, people we know as Black Panthers, et cetera, come out of that Southern tradition. I mean, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, so the list goes on. Of course, she was a member of the Black Panther Party for a small amount of time, and then later the Black Liberation Army, which is the armed kind of offshoot of the Black Panther Party, where they were like robbing banks, robbing gangsters, thugs, et cetera, to get money to feed the communities. And so it was really some revolutionary stuff. Of course, many of you may know Assata from this incident that happened on the New Jersey Turnpike, which I'll talk a little bit about. She was incarcerated at the Clinton Correctional Facility, and then she was liberated, right? She was liberated by her comrades from this facility. And so she just didn't break out. She had people like Mutulu, like Marilyn Buck, Sylvia Guardini, who helped her to become liberated. And then she received, after like 4 years, political asylum in Cuba, where she still resides today. She's 76 years old. And the United States is still after her. So this is the last point. In 1998, they called for her to come home, $1 million. 2005 and 2013 is when they raised it to like $2 million. And I don't know if y'all remember who was president in 2013. I don't know if that makes a difference. But I think it's something important to think about, like under the control of y'all's favorite imperialists. These are the things that were really happening, to Assata Shakur while she's in older age. And when you think about maybe your mother or your grandmother, calling her to come home. So just a brief timeline, right? Joined the Black Panther Party in Harlem, 1970, after visiting Oakland and the Oakland Black Panther headquarters. She was inspired. She was also a student activist, which is really important to the tradition of Black studies, right? You don't get Black studies unless you get, those students in California and across the United States who are pushing to learn more about themselves within the classroom. And so she was not necessarily a part of that tradition, but she was a student organizer, a part of the Golden Drum Society. She then joined the Black Liberation Army, and then the New Jersey Turnpike is when her and her comrades, and they were accused of, they had a shootout, and they accused Assata of killing a state trooper, which, she was brought to the hospital, harassed, tortured, etc., under the FBI, police, etc., and was in facilities. At least the trial was going on for at least 4 to 5 years. And so that's a picture of her there, when she's in the hospital. And then while serving time, after being accused of this crime, she was liberated from the Clinton Correctional Facility. And then that's just a photo of her in Cuba. It's also important to note that she was liberated on Black Solidarity Day, which is celebrated in New York every November. And when the comrades found out that she was liberated, they read a statement that she wrote, and it was really powerful. Unfortunately, there are no videos at this time, but I've done oral interviews of people who was there in New York when that was read, and it was apparently a really vibrant experience, and everyone was just happy that she was, going home. So I also come into this work, shout out to Howard again. When I was a grad student, I worked in One Spring on. Y'all know what that is, hopefully. One of the, pinnacle, Black archives throughout the world. Amistad's one, Schomburg, and then Moreland. And so one of the things that I found in there, because ancestors talk to us in this work as well. I found a letter that she wrote to Emile YX, formerly Leroy Jones, and she's just thanking him for supporting her and being in solidarity with her during the struggle. And there were other people that also were in solidarity with her, Angela Davis, Alice Walker, etc. And so she's just, thanking him for that. But this is what called to me. It was literally just a legal paper, in his archives. His archives are right there in Howard. And I just opened it and I was like, oh shoot, this is from Assata Shakur. This is her handwriting. This is something that she wrote to him. And so I thought that was really inspiring. And I have circa, 1977, because we really don't know when she wrote it. All she put was Sunday. Because, she probably passed it to someone and they gave it to him. So when we're thinking again about this underground struggle, we think about that. But I also think about it, Emile YX being one of the most thinkers of, the Black arts movement, which is the aesthetic sister of the Black Power movement, right? And so even through all of our movements, there is still this artistic, musical, this component of our struggle that is being expressed through people like Amiri, Sonia Sanchez, Nikki Giovanni. It goes back to the Harlem Renaissance, Black Power movement, and even now when we think about hip hop and playlists being included in the struggles as well. Because I have not been to a protest that does not have music playing, whether it's Kendrick Lamar, whoever it is, it's still a part of this tradition that we're trying to build and go to. So trying to make that connection of the Black arts movement in connection to the hip hop generation. And so Asare has some really interesting views on hip hop in general, and the Black freedom movement and the way that hip hop can be a part of that. And Yasin Bey, many of you know, formerly Mos Def, wrote an article where he's talking about the way that we, as African Americans, but also those who practice hip hop, need to be in solidarity with Assata Shakur. And you see him pictured with a sign that says Assata is welcome here. And so he said, my first memory of Assata Shakur was the wanted posters all over my Brooklyn neighborhood. They said her name was Joanne Chesimard, that she was a killer, an escaped convict, and armed and dangerous. They made her sound like a supervillain, like something out of a comic book. But even then, as a child, I couldn't believe what I was being told. When I looked at these posters and my mugshot, these posters and the mugshot of a slight brown, hot cheekbone woman with a full afro, I saw someone who looked like she was in my family, an aunt, a mother. And so again, thinking about the way that we see ourselves, right, in this struggle, and not the way that others have defined us, and others being those who are, white supremacists, our enemies, etc., however you want to describe them. And so he was able to turn that around, even as a child, to look inward toward the models that we have within our own communities to describe what happened to Assata, and just these ideas of freedom. And so one of the things that Assata said about hip hop was that hip hop can be a very powerful weapon to help expand young people's political and social consciousness. But just as with any weapon, if you don't know how to use it, if you don't know where to point it or what you're looking for, you can end up shooting yourself in the foot or killing your sisters or brothers. The government recognized immediately that rap music has enormous revolutionary potential. Certain politicians got on the bandwagon to attack rappers like Sister Soldier and NWA. You got various police organizations across the country who have openly expressed their hostility towards rap artists. For them, most rappers fall into the category of potential criminals, cop killers, or subversives. And so I thought that was really powerful that she's making this comment about hip hop and rap being, this way to move forward and to really elevate our communities. And recognizing it as a form of, a tactic toward revolution. I think that is really powerful coming from Assata Shakur. Many of you may have heard the song Common. Are y'all familiar with Common? A little bit. And so I don't want to play all of it, but in the beginning of the song, when the entire song is a tribute to Assata Shakur. He actually met Assata in 1999 on his trip to Cuba during a brigade, and he came back in 2000 and dedicated an entire song to her. And so it's even interesting, like as he's invited to places like the White House or to speak at universities, he's being criticized for this. But Common still, I don't know, he's still being, he still gets what he needs in this work. I'm just gonna play a little bit of that because I really think. Well, maybe not, but this is the beginning of the song. He's saying, there were lights and sirens, which is literally the first line of Assata Shakur's autobiography. Gunshots firing, cover your eyes, and as I described, the scene so violent. And so he literally breaks down the turnpike all the way up until, she's liberated and is in Cuba. And so I encourage you all to go listen to the song. He's also on one of Jay-Z's Magna Carta albums as well, talking about Assata. And so I included both of those, but I don't think any of these are. I'm gonna try to skip ahead. I don't want to hear Jay-Z. I'm trying to get to Common first, but it's pretty much like, I went to Bermuda, met a shooter, and just again acknowledges Assata and the struggle and the sacrifices that she made to be in that space. Public Enemy also paid homage to her as well. Hard, I call him Hard, recorded and artist, supporter of Chesimard. And so you hear people, of course, going back to her, what she called her slave name, but also thinking about her in this struggle. And Public Enemy, have a lot of rap albums that are very much focused on socially, politically conscious music. So this is one where they shout her out. And it's so interesting that Assata Shakur actually heard this record, and she was really surprised that Public Enemy, had referenced her. She was like, wow, they are in solidarity, with my struggle. So Chuck D is actually the one that, uses this lyric. I'm not trying to play it really. But I will share for those who are interested in listening more. And then Black Thought, many of you familiar with Black Thought. One of the things that he says, and he's in this song with Eminem, and one of my friends was like, don't include Eminem in your in your presentation. But in the song, he says, taste of your own medicine. Here come a dose of it. I break free like Chesimard, which is the title of my presentation. I just thought that was a really dope line, just essentially because we're thinking about freedom constantly all the time. And so I just had to include that really quickly. But he's like, don't include that. And then the other part, just trying to get more into the context, because when I talk to my students about Assata Shakur, I'm like, yeah, I know Assata Shakur. And I'm like, yeah, that's Tupac mama. And I'm like, no, close. But why would they know that, right? If they only hear about Tupac. And so it's even interesting when I was growing up, when after Tupac passed, people would always make comments that he was in Cuba, right? And so I thought that was really interesting. But the Shakur family lineage comes from El-Had Saladin Shakur, who they call Abba as the father. He's the father of Zayd Malik Shakur and Lumuma Abdul Shakur. And Zayd Malik Shakur was the one that was shot and killed during the Turnpike incident. You know, one of her comrades was also shot, and he was actually killed on the scene. And so one of the things that Assata puts in her autobiography was, I decided when she changed her name as a new African on Assata Alubala Shakur. Assata means she who struggles. Alubala means love for the people. And I took the name Shakur out of respect for Zayd and Zayd's family. Shakur means the thankful. And so it's really, really in solidarity with Zayd, their friendship, but also in connection to the Shakur family. And then Matul Shakur, no, again, blood relation to the Saladin family, but he is the ex-husband of Afeni Shakur, and they weren't technically married on paper, but in the tradition of what they practiced, they were. And she also married Lumumba. So some really interesting stuff about Lumumba already being married and, you know, being Muslim. And he's also the father of Greene Shakur and stepfather again of Tupac Shakur. And then that's a picture of all of them around Abba. So yeah. The other part is really interesting. Has anyone seen Dear Mama? Yeah. So I'm not gonna completely spoil it. But some of the things they talk about was Tupac and the way that he was supposed to really like carry out the struggle of those who are still incarcerated, but also this idea of thug code / thug life. So, you know, he had a tattoo across his belly that said thug life, and people thought he was like identifying with some really, you know, criminal activity, etc. But one of the things with the thug code was for them to reimagine what the life of drug dealers, gangsters, etc. would be. And they were like, you know, really small things. I had to write it down because I didn't want to forget. It was supposed to be like a ceasefire where they weren't doing like crazy gang things. One of the things they said, it was specifically for hustlers, dealers, and gangbangers, the true dwellers of thug life. So no slanging to pregnant sisters, right? Because that can be very harmful for women who are pregnant to be, you know, doing drugs. No senseless brutality and rape must stop. And then also to control the hood and make it safe for squares. So squares mean people who are not involved, right? The language we're laughing, but you know, they're really trying to change the way that these organizations were operating outside of the prison system. And so a lot of people didn't know, and I fully didn't know that this was how Tupac was really carrying out, or trying to carry out that mission. The other thing I put is, you know, his mother Afeni, not only was she a Black Panther, but also she was a part of the Panther 21. And it's really because she was at Lumumba's house at the time. And so they drove her with them as well. But she was one of the first to get out, and she was put on a platform to help to raise money for the other 20 Panthers who were still in jail. And then COINTELPRO is really big. And I think COINTELPRO in a hip hop context is still being carried out today. Somebody gave a presentation earlier about the way that, a professor here, about the way that hip hop is used in court, right? In terms of the lyrics and rhetoric. And so I think it's really interesting that with a lot of the music that, of course, is being surveilled. There are FBI agents who specifically only listen to hip hop and rap as a way to, you know, charge them later. But COINTELPRO was one of the main reasons how the Black Panther Party, the Black Liberation Army, and even going back to the 1930s, how these Black organizers and organizations were dismantled, right? And so some of the things that Tupac says is that he is a descendant of those who are Black Panthers, those who are in the struggle. And so one of his songs, he said, my homeboys in Clinton and Rikers Island, Mumia, Lutulu, Geronimo Pratt, who was an ex-military person, later joined the Black Panther Party, who was also Tupac's godfather, and all the political prisoners in San Quentin, all the jail houses, I'm with you, and that's in the song, Hold Your Head. And then the last piece, which is also mentioned in Dear Mama, I'm not fully spoiling it, I promise, is that Tupac was supposed to be the chairman of the new Black Panther Party. And so again, he was supposed to really like carry on the struggles, of Black Panthers and those who are, actively practicing toward, Black liberation. And so one of the things that, another thing that Assata said was, I started to really like rap and respect it as an art form. I remember listening to groups like Public Enemy in the beginning and how surprised I was when someone had brought down a copy of their record, Rebel Without Applause, and hearing Chuck D actually saying my name and paying me respect. Rapping is communicating. It should be an instrument for our liberation. And then she later said, we need to start rapping about ending not only racism, but ending sexism, and start talking about how to have a more human life. And so she was really big on, utilizing hip hop as this way to gain liberation and also in other forms of oppression like sexism, etc. And so I'm almost finished. And that comes from this article here that I just mentioned. I think it's really important to recognize others who were also in exile in Cuba as well. And Nyame Abedin, who many of you may be familiar with. She was a Black American hip hop activist and also considered the godmother of Cuban hip hop. She was charged with helping to liberate Assata out of the Clinton Correctional Facility and then fled to Cuba. So Cuba might be the way, y'all, I don't know. And so she's really well known throughout Cuba even today. She's passed now, but when you say her name, like the Cuban people resonate and know her, and a really beautiful story. And so I'm thinking now about the way that Assata story is carried out in other spaces, not just in Cuba, but other spaces throughout the African diaspora, in particular, right? How are other Africans throughout the world looking at political prisoners, specifically someone like Assata Shakur. And so Assata has a huge influence, not just on hip hop, but on culture in general. And so you see Berkeley students, in 2020, we're trying to rename Barrows Hall to Assata Shakur, like Assata Shakur Hall. Of course, you see Berkeley, it's like, nah. And so they came up with like other figures who they would want to make it after, but this was during a time when, everyone was organizing around changing the names of different halls and removing monuments and things like that. Marquette University also were forced to remove a mural that they had inside of one of the rooms on campus because, the university is like, you can't be affiliated with the cop killer. And then Black Lives Matter mural in California, which has, Mary Bowser did the whole Black Lives Matter Square and all the other, places copied. But I thought this was really interesting because they have Assata in it, within the picture, and it's the quote where she says, we must love each other and support each other. Of course, Elisa Garza always references Assata Shakur as the one who inspired her, one of the founders of Black Lives Matter movement, #movement. And then organizations. And so I mentioned that I'm a member of PACA, Pan-African Community Action. We hold a study group, a political education study group, every second and fourth Wednesday. It's hybrid, it's virtual. And we named it after her, right, in solidarity, but also because, what way to get politically educated than to read and to learn about someone like Assata Shakur. Then there's an organization, Assata's Daughters. And this is a picture of a brother, right? He has on his shirt, Assata taught me. And so what's happening now is that her quote, it is our duty to fight for our freedom, it is our duty to win, we have nothing to lose but our change. It has been popularized and people are using that and co-opting that in all types of spaces. At a Bernie Sanders rally, they had a brother who was saying that, and I'm like, this has no context in terms of what is really happening in this community, right? And so one of the main criticisms that I have, other organizers and activists have is that people are claiming Assata taught me or Assata is welcome here. It's our duty to fight for our freedom without fully adopting the politics of somebody like Assata Shakur. It's just trendy, right? It's cute. It's like, oh yeah, I rock with Assata. It's like, but how are you carrying those things out in your everyday practices? She was someone who was anti-police, anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist, right? And we are still kind of operating within those things on a daily basis. And so that'll be in the book more in detail. And so throughout this entire, so this is a chapter within my book, and the constant question that I'm kind of asking is about freedom. And it's about how are we defining our freedom today? Because as things evolve in terms of our oppression, we also have to evolve the way that we think about freedom, whether it be in hip hop, whether it be in any artistic form, whether it be in our writings as academics. And so one of the things that really resonated with me is that she was like, I can tell you a whole lot about what freedom is not versus what freedom is, because many of us have never experienced that. And she said, freedom is the right to grow, it's the right to blossom. Freedom is the right to be yourself, to be who you are, and to be who you want to be, and to do what you want to do. So I thought that was really important to kind of highlight in this moment, especially as we think about political prisoners, if we think about our own ways of finding freedom, and Black August in general. So I'll stop there. Thank y'all. If y'all have any questions, comments, concerns.
Because of time, what we're gonna do is, if people have questions of the presenters, since we don't have a session right after this, you'll be able to ask questions, but one of the things that we did want to so one of the things that we did want to do is maybe kind of have informal lunch and learn with Mecca, who was here yesterday, and I think a lot of them who were here yesterday saw the panel we had inside the industry and was able to get a lot of information. So I know it's lunch, so I know some of you went to Blackburn to get lunch. Apparently there's lunch in there. So what we want to do is kind of have a informal conversation. We're going to stay in here, and then for the panelists and those who want to ask them questions, you'll be able to do that as well. So we're going to take about 15 minutes to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's what I said. I said, but even the rim, you got the problem. Yeah,